A year ago, a maniac with an axe broke into Lisa's house and brutally murdered her mother. After that, Lisa went into psychological shock, but eventually life changes. Her father found himself a new love and moved with Lisa to her. Now the girl has a new stepsister Taffy, a carefree chatterbox cheerleader, and a vicious stepmother, the queen of passive aggression. But the only place where Lisa feels at ease is a small cemetery lost in the woods, and hidden in its depths is the ancient grave of some young man. One day, Lisa wishes to be near him, and her wish comes true when suddenly reanimated dead boy shows up at her house. Horror comedy is perhaps one of the most complex genres in cinema, but from the outside it can deceptively seem simple. The main pitfall here is that authors need to combine the bad combinations, the scary and the funny, while keeping events and characters compelling and maintaining the integrity of the story. There are several ways to achieve this. You can go the way of Edgar Wright, who created Shaun of the Dead as a typical horror, humor in which is born from atypically ridiculous characters, or you can do like Peter Jackson in Brain Dead or Sam Raimi in Evil Dead 2, and twist naturalistic body horror somewhere in the maximum overload to make your eyes pop out in excitement. Unfortunately, in recent years, this art of balance, where you need taste, tact, a sense of humor, and an understanding of suspense, seems to have been lost. Horror comedies are still coming out, but their creators are increasingly substituting boldness for bravado, originality for assertiveness, and brutality for insensitivity. Lisa Frankenstein is one of the most obvious examples of this approach, a horror comedy in which just about everything that could be wrong with such a movie is wrong. The screenplay was written by Diablo Cody, the screenwriter of Juno and Jennifer's Body, whose motifs, by the way, are clearly visible in the finale of Lisa Frankenstein. The movie is set in 1989, and stylistically it's a mix of Heathers, Mean Girls, and Tim Burton, with Cole Sprouse as the reanimated corpse obviously copying Johnny Depp from Edward Scissorhands and Sleepy Hollow. And here you can already notice a catch. Both Heathers and Mean Girls were first of all a satire. A satire on the world of high school, on the ideals of teenagers, on how they combine extremes and naivety, cruelty, and ridiculousness. Lisa Frankenstein, in turn, satire only in form. All the characters in the movie are twisted up into unrealistic, kitschy absurdity, whether it's Lisa's cartoonish stepsister or her grotesquely manipulative stepmother, but at the same time the plot does not broadcast any thoughts with their help. It's satire without the object of satire, just because it seems fun. In general, this approach, because it seems fun, for Lisa Frankenstein, is characteristic of everything, from the inexplicably changing character of the protagonist, at some point suddenly turning into some incarnation of a killer doll Tiffany from the Chucky movies, to the cowardly compromise between what happens on the screen and outside it. The latter needs to be elaborated, because it is a common misfortune of almost all modern youth horror films, which are becoming more and more chaste in their depiction of violence and sex, but at the same time more and more brutal in nature. The characters of Lisa Frankenstein move easily to murder and dismemberment. The authors do not reflect on it themselves and do not allow to do it their self-absorbed characters, to whom we are invited to connect emotionally just because something bad happened to them in their past. It's as if psychological trauma in modern movies gives you an indulgence for anything. But in the movie's final act you identify with only a scared Taffy, who, shocked by what's happening, only twitches at every move Lisa makes in her direction. Even though the girl only wants to explain herself. Lisa Frankenstein may amuse with its witticisms, funny pop cultural references and brilliant acting, but fundamentally it's a very wrong movie that suggests laughing at things that it's not very normal to laugh at, and shows a complete lack of piety for violence and death. Western cinema is moving further and further away from the overtly graphic visuals of classic exploitation horror, but it's also moving toward that inner, nasty, thick-skinned insensitivity that exploitation, even the most badass, never allowed itself. A year